volunteer-involving organisation should have an insurance policy that covers volunteers. There are several different types of policies, so it's often confusing to work out which is the most appropriate. Basically, the organisation itself should be covered either by employers' liability insurance or public liability insurance, in the event of volunteers being harmed due to the organisation's negligence. Public liability insurance should cover both the organisation and the volunteer in the event of a third party being injured through the actions of a volunteer. Depending on the type of work involved, the organisation may also need professional indemnity insurance. Organisations need to be aware that insurance contracts require the utmost good faith from the purchaser of the insurance. This means that organisations must provide all relevant information when looking for insurance, such as the numbers of volunteers working within the organisation and what activities they do, etc. Organisations can use the services of an insurance broker with experience working with voluntary organisations. Brokers can help in different ways, including negotiating premiums with insurance companies, negotiating appropriate cover for an organisation's volunteers, and advising the organisation on limits or exclusions in policies, e.g., even if policies specifically refer to volunteers, they may only be covered while doing voluntary activity for the organisation or possibly travelling to or from the activity. Organisations should make sure that volunteers have accurate and up-to-date information about insurance that does not give an impression that insurance may be available or available at certain levels of cover when it isn't. It can be useful to make a general statement that all insurance policies are limited and don't include certain things and that the organisation's cover may change. As an organisation, it would be good practice to follow these pointers to ensure that you have the appropriate insurance in place to cover your volunteers. Ensure that your policies explicitly mention volunteers because they may not be automatically included in your insurance cover. Check with your insurer if there are any upper or lower age limits for volunteers before recruiting younger or older volunteers. Make sure that your insurance company is aware of the types of activities that your volunteers will be doing, because if the tasks are high risk, then the insurance policies will need to be adapted to accommodate these risks. Produce a written risk assessment for each of the roles that volunteers will be performing, because this will help your insurer to tailor your policy to suit your needs. Employers in Great Britain have a duty under the Employers' Liability Compulsory Insurance Act of 1969 and Employers' Liability Compulsory Insurance Regulations 1998 to have employers' liability insurance for no less than £5 million, but the recommended cover is now £10 million. This insurance must cover liability for accidents, disease or injury to an employee due to negligence or breach of health and safety law by the employer. Employers, workers, apprentices and some trainees must be insured under this cover, but there is no duty to insure volunteers. If volunteers are found to be working under a contract, they will be seen by law as employees or workers. Although this legislation doesn't force organisations to insure volunteers, it is advisable for organisations to do so, in case negligence cases are brought by volunteers. Organisations should make sure that volunteers are covered by their employer's liability insurance or under similar terms in their public liability policy. This means that organisations should specifically tell their insurer that they involve volunteers. The above regulations, the Employers' Liability Compulsory Insurance Act of 1969 and the Employers' Liability Compulsory Insurance Regulations of 1998, require employers to do certain things such as display the certificate of insurance. Employers in Great Britain have a duty under the Employers' Liability Compulsory Insurance Act of 1969 and Employers' Liability Compulsory Insurance Regulations 1998 to have employers' liability insurance for no less than £5 million, but the recommended cover is now £10 million. This insurance must cover liability for accidents, disease or injury to an employee due to negligence or breach of health and safety law by the employer. Employers, workers, apprentices and some trainees must be insured under this cover, but there is no duty to insure volunteers. If volunteers are found to be working under a contract, they will be seen by law as employees or workers. Although this legislation doesn't force organisations to insure volunteers, it is advisable for organisations to do so, in case negligence cases are brought by volunteers. Organisations should make sure that volunteers are covered by their employer's liability insurance or under similar terms in their public liability policy. This means that organisations should specifically tell their insurer that they involve volunteers. The above regulations, the Employers' Liability Compulsory Insurance Act of 1969 and the Employers' Liability Compulsory Insurance Regulations of 1998, require employers to do certain things such as display the certificate of insurance. This insurance cover is not a legal requirement, but any organisation that owns or controls premises, holds public events or works with the public should have it. It's required by many funders and the conditions of registering with regulating bodies, such as with Ofsted for childcare premises. Organisations may have to have this insurance under contract to provide services, e.g. for a local authority. In general, public liability insurance protects the organisation for claims by third parties, including service users and members of the public, for death, illness, loss, injury or accident caused by the negligence of the organisation. It can be extended to protect the organisation against claims from volunteers arising from injury or sickness as a result of negligence by the organisation. It can also protect for loss or damage to property caused through the negligence of someone acting for the organisation, which may include volunteers. Policies vary, so organisations should check that their policy adequately covers their volunteers. Organisations providing information and advice to other professional services should have professional indemnity insurance and make sure that volunteers involved in these activities are covered by the policy. Professional liability, professional indemnity areas and omissions or malpractice insurance covers the organisation for claims arising from loss or injury caused by services provided negligently or without reasonable care. Such loss might arise, for example, from incorrect care or inaccurate advice. An organisation can be sued for claims arising from incorrect advice or information, even if it is given freely or via a telephone helpline. Professional liability insurance should also cover defamation, inadvertent breach of copyright, confidentiality and loss of documents. This type of insurance covers organisations for claims arising from injury, loss or damage resulting from advice or other services. Personal accident insurance covers injuries, accidents or deaths that happen if the organisation has not been negligent. Some organisations may want to provide this cover or extend an existing policy as a courtesy towards their volunteers. This covers volunteers in the event of injury, accident or death for which the organisation has no liability. There is likely to be an upper age limit on this form of insurance. This does not mean that people above this age cannot volunteer, but they should be aware that they are not covered for accidents where the organisation has not been at fault. Injuries to them arising from negligence will still be covered under liability insurance cover. We will cover volunteer drivers in the next presentation, as there are a number of things you need to consider. The Volunteer Centre has a wide range of resources for those who manage volunteers. These range from sample documents, information sheets, we can give you links to online resources, and also potential networks that may help with your volunteer management, where you can connect with other people who manage volunteers. There's no such thing as a silly question when you're involving volunteers, and we're more than happy to help you if we can. Please do get in touch and we'll do our best to help. Here are our contact details, email, direct phone number, and also our Facebook and Twitter feeds. There's loads of information on our website, which is volunteeringcounts.org.uk, including details of our training. We do regular posts on our blog sharing information, ideas, events, and also have an opportunity of the day every single day for local volunteer involving groups. So why not get in touch and see how we can help you get the very best of your volunteer programme.